Hey everyone, Christine here. Hope everything is well. It's cold over here in the Bay Area, but we're staying warm. So I wrote an article last week and I put it up on LinkedIn. It's where I usually put my thoughts, LinkedIn, Twitter, specifically for the cannabis industry or anybody who can benefit them. There was a conversation I had recently with an attorney from a different state in regards to, I guess, the need in the cannabis industry. He's more into dealing with documentation and permitting, and which is great because that's all needed too, especially now as the cannabis industry has risen up to same playing field as everybody else. But anyways, we had a conversation, and then I replied to him a couple days later, a little while later, after I had time to think. And so I kind of want to read it to you, put it out there, and hopefully it benefits everybody that's jumping into the cannabis industry, who's been in it in illegal operations. As you come up to work with everybody else in legal operations, you got to know these things. So here was my response. Let's see. Thanks for the conversation. It was educational for me to learn about the documentation needed to, and the permitting needed to open up a dispensary or a cultivation site. So I want to share with you a little bit of what I bring, just a little nugget, because I think both roles are important, especially in operations. So one second here. So we bring both pieces of the puzzle together. Allow me to explain. There's two sides to any business, right? There's the front of the house, and the front of the house in this case can represent the dispensaries. And then there's the back of the house. The back of the house in this case can represent cultivation and environmental. And I don't know what I don't know about the back of the house, and you don't know what you don't know about the front of the house. Your expertise is in legally operating as a business, permits, legal documents, and all the environmental requirements your clients must follow. My expertise is in operations, implementing and execution of the standards and laws to follow that are in compliance with those permits and legal documents. You could probably build an SOP for a legal business operating in your sleep. You're an attorney, that's what you do. So that's exactly what I've been able to do in business operations. Build SOPs in my sleep, in that different language I talked to you about. And what I mean by different language is that corporations, they have great policies and procedures that they comply with. They teach their staff and operations all the way down, but it's a lot of it's in legal jargon. When you're working with restaurants, retail, cannabis, you lose their attention when you come at them with all these, big words and, whatever the legal word is for something. You lose their attention. So what I've been able to do is build standing operating procedures designed specifically to this workforce. So anyways, what I'm saying is with those permits and legal documents come all the legal business operating requirements that any other business in the country has to comply with, and that have been laid down and established many years ago. It would be naive of anyone to believe that with an industry that's been operating mostly underground for 80 plus years, that they've been operating under any sort of state or federal employment or operational guidelines underground. And now with the legalization of recreational use cannabis, it's just like retail and just like the restaurants, same playing field. And those other two industries, they teach. They implement policies and procedures that exemplify the standards for achieving workplace compliances and laws, operating costs, and productivity. In any business, there are P&Ls, and there's a structure to controlling those P&Ls. There's inventory and waste and labor control and staff development, management development, and workplace safety and employment law. I mean, it goes on. And yes, even food safety in the cannabis industry. There's not one business or industry that these elements do not apply for sustainability. The cannabis industry is no different. They will need these same structures to control their business. On the phone, as you were describing how egos run very high in the cannabis industry, and staff do not take kindly to people from retail or restaurant coming into cannabis, some things come to mind that I'd like to share with you, and maybe you can share with your other clients, because it's very important to know. As their businesses expand, when there's fires, you got to contain them really quickly, get a hold of them. And when you're operating with a bunch of egos, shit just goes sideways all the time. So 1, egos have cost people their career, are costly in operations, and are extremely dangerous in this specific industry. This industry is not federally legal. We are operating in the gray area. So egos, you guys gotta go. This product is a medication that the government plays footsies with and can shut down at any time. And I'm sure the pharmaceutical industry and the politicians would love to magnify any issues going on in the industry to start putting that flashlight back on. What's going on with you guys? This industry should not be about a pissing contest. Everyone that's on board or is getting on board needs to be on board. And that's by following compliances. Not just with permits and licensings and vendors, but operational excellence and legal working compliances as well. It's the law and it's smart business practice. If the industry workforce isn't interested in complying with all the laws, what then has all this fighting been about for the last 80 years to get this medication back into society to use? Right? It's been my experience over 30 years in operations and retail restaurant industry that when leadership allows for staff to operate on their terms instead of what's best for business and operations, you've then fostered an environment of the inmates running the asylum. And that is a recipe for disaster in business. There's no room for that shit in the cannabis industry. The reputation of cannabis overall is still very fragile. And if people are driven solely by money or ego, we've got bigger problems than we think. I'm sure anybody out there would agree. I've created the SOPs and the training specifically for this workforce, and I'm here to help if I'm needed. Thanks for your time, and it was great talking to you. So that was my response. You got to get a hold of things while they're small, because when they're bigger and you try to rate them in, that's a shit show, a whole nother mess. So thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.